The flying saucer, a 20th century mystery, cannot be ignored. The strange discs have been reported by sober Americans since 1947. Just what did these people see? Were the flying saucers things of fantasy? Some say they're natural objects, meteors or bright stars, transformed by imagination into discs of mystery. Others say the saucers are weather balloons, common enough in the sky and easily mistaken for a disc. Admiral Calvin Bolster of the Navy's Bureau of Aeronautics gives his conclusion.
These balloons might explain isolated cases of circular-shaped, unidentified objects.
3 separate UFO videos released by the New York Times in 2017 were actually genuine.
The objects seen in the various clips are unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs.
Can you see the big cloud like that? See it's going past the big cloud now?
This is real. This is unidentified aerial phenomena.
The U.S. Navy has finally acknowledged that videos appearing to show UFOs flying through the air are real.
Oh, that's crazy.
Villagers reported seeing a blue and orange glowing thing kind of hurtling at them, right? It looked like a UFO.
It shows an alleged discovery of an alien in Siberia.
Are we alone in the universe?
I mean, we would be silly to think that we are the only race of beings out there in the cosmos.
They don't openly show themselves.
And they've been there for hundreds of thousands of years.
There's been much more going on in the realm of space than NASA, than Apollo, than just what we're told on the public surface.
There's been no advancement. No advancement at all, not even a little bit.
I was recruited to go off planet in 2006 to join a Mars colony.
These advanced technologies are being built and used in order to create a larger network.
I think this technology is back engineered by alien technology.
More and more of this information is starting to trickle out. Some of it is planned to be released soon.
There's a lot more to come. I do believe we are going to get the truth on this. In modern UFO research, most people seem to congregate around the idea of grays with the large heads and the black eyes, and they say they're from Zeta Reticuli, and oh, the UFO subject is all about abduction, and it's all about people being contacted. Well, I don't doubt that that part of it is happening. But what most people don't seem to understand is that Roswell was over 70 years ago, 1947.
Roswell, New Mexico. In the summer of 1947, an unidentified flying object crashed. This incident would change the world forever.
So what people probably don't know is that the negative connotations revolved around the phrase conspiracy theory actually revolved around this single event. You have the CIA, the Majestic 12, the Men in Black, all spawned after what happened at Roswell. So in the summer of 1947, President Truman's administration created the CIA and the Majestic 12 in the same summer that Roswell happened. I mean, that just seems too much of a coincidence. Wouldn't you agree?
rumors of an alien spacecraft crash landing with actual occupants who were extraterrestrial in nature. It is said that they were recovered by the military. The very first report from the Roswell Army Airfield said they captured a flying disc, which was eventually brought to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio for examination. However, the United States Air Force claimed it was an experimental weather balloon.
And as you can imagine, instead of keeping people from digging into this because it was really a weather balloon, this actually provoked further questions as to what really is going on in space. I mean, the local media were all reporting on this event on their front pages, very clearly stating flying saucers had been captured. Then one day these reports just stop. If there's stuff going on in space, why hasn't the government been making this information public? I mean, should we really trust our military if they're changing the story like that from a flying disc to a weather balloon?
Now, instead of asking questions such as, what happened at Roswell? We're asking, okay, we know something happened at Roswell. We know that there was some craft that landed there. What did the government do with those crafts, or those crafts? Were there aliens involved? Where did they come from? Who are they? Where did all this move to? And then we start asking more questions about what's going on.
Sid Mortner, executive editor of International News Photos, comments on these unusual pictures.
Our agency refused to release photographs of a purported flying saucer to the newspapers of the country until we could inspect the original negatives. We now have the negatives in hand, and I can vouch for the fact that they have not been retouched or faked in any way, and that they are indeed actual photographs of a so-called flying saucer.
By the mid-1990s, public polls, such as a 1997 CNN Time poll, revealed that the majority of people believed that extraterrestrials had indeed visited Earth, that so-called aliens had landed at Roswell, their bodies recovered, and a government cover-up had taken place. But if this really did happen, then where are the traces of it today? If the government was hiding it, what did they find in 1947 that they couldn't disclose to the public? And if they did find something, what was the aftermath of this event?
And at that time, the United States government came into possession of a working interstellar capable spaceship. They didn't necessarily learn how to fly it right away. They had a lot of problems flying it, but they were able to do something called reverse engineering. And it was very fascinating for me because my introduction into the UFO literature and the UFO subject occurred back in 1993 when a friend of mine told me that his physics professor had worked for NASA throughout the 1970s, and it was considered common knowledge in NASA at the higher echelons that UFOs were real, that extraterrestrials had crash-landed on Earth, and that we had gotten their technology. In other words, what they call reverse engineering is, if something crashes and you don't understand how it works, you take a certain piece of it and you bring it to a factory and you have people analyze it and try to build it on their own. And then you make all these breakthroughs in the process. So some of the things that were found on the Roswell crash that were successfully reverse engineered include things like fiber optic cables. This is a bendable piece of glass that sends photons through it, which can be used to transfer data. They found all these glass fibers inside the craft. They could see there was light inside, and they started to play around and figure out, how can we build this? Believe it or not, computer chips were another one. In the original Roswell crash, they had these wafers that were about this big, like the size of a quarter, and circular. And they didn't know what the heck they were, but when they looked at it under a microscope, they found all these lines. And so eventually they discovered they could do this with silicon and make transistors down at that microscopic level. It was very, very curious to the people in the 1940s when they got the Roswell crash and they opened up the panels underneath the deck that had, where the control surface was. They found no wires, they found no conventionally identifiable electrical circuits. So I had gotten this briefing back in 1993, and I was told that laser beams came from this, that LED lights came from this, that infrared night vision came from this, certain materials that we had, such as Velcro, Kevlar bulletproof vests, and then of course fiber optic cables and computer chips.
If you look at the history of humankind, there has never been technology like this, save for maybe going back to a time when we can't really remember. So if that's the case, where did it come from? Why is it here the way that it is right now? Why do things look the way that they look right now? Why are there all of these stories of aliens, of alien abductions, good stories and bad stories? There's a reason for it.
Technology, the driving force that progresses society and pushes forward the advancement of humankind. Did this technology come from only one source? Where did it start, and from who? One case study is to look at the work of Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla, in my personal opinion, is one of the most underrated and the most brilliant minds of the last century. There's even a quote from Einstein when asked, "How does it feel to be the smartest person alive?" Einstein actually responds, "I don't know, you'll have to ask Nikola Tesla." What makes Tesla so relevant today is that he is the father of the generation of electricity in the form of alternating currents.
In school, we're taught, that is, even if they talk about him anymore, that Tesla was a mysterious, penniless, failed scientist who really couldn't amount to too much, and that Edison was the real genius. When in fact, it was Edison who stole all of Tesla's ideas. Tesla wanted to give the world free energy, and Edison and JP Morgan used Tesla's ideas to build a fortune for themselves while forcing Tesla to go bankrupt. This way, he could no longer be a threat to any of them.
What was Nikola Tesla doing? He was doing experiments into what he called radiant energy, figuring out how to send electricity wirelessly, simply using the Earth as basically a giant capacitor. He was wirelessly sending electricity. And then towards the end of Nikola Tesla's life, he was doing research into what he called a dynamic theory of gravity, basically ideas of gravity that were far outside this standard model of physics or this mainstream science, mainstream physics that we're told. Nikola Tesla was heavily suppressed for all of this research. All of his more advanced research was written out of the history books. When Nikola Tesla died, his research was actually taken by the FBI and classified.
But what were the things that Tesla was really working on? Things that had to be suppressed and hidden from the public. Could it have changed our society today? And where in fact did he get his ideas from?
One thing about Tesla is that he was never afraid to think outside of the box. I think scientists today have confined themselves within a box because they will only study things that they perceive as tangible. And anything that is intangible, they consider superstitious, which is why breakthroughs in the realm of science is very slow. So they've either limited themselves from these outdated theories of the past, or they are specifically placed there as guard dogs to make sure that nobody else makes breakthroughs in this regard, which would change our entire society and flip their world upside down.
Tesla, he really explored all aspects of reality. He even knew words from ancient Sanskrit, which are Buddhist texts such as prana, to describe the force and matter that exists all around us. So I personally don't think of Tesla as a scientist. He was following the path of ancient sages and saints before him by exploring all aspects of the human body, life, the universe. There are some scholars who even believe he had a time machine or was using some form of technology to see future events. There's even a quote from Tesla in which he perfectly described cell phones, the internet, and even video chatting.
When wireless is perfectly applied, the whole Earth will be converted into a huge brain, which in fact it is, all things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. We shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance. Not only this, but through television and telephony, we shall see and hear one another as perfectly as though we're face to face, despite intervening distances of thousands of miles. And the instruments through which we shall be able to do this will be amazingly simple compared with our present telephone. A man will be able to carry one in his vest pocket.
So how could he describe this so perfectly without somehow seeing this? This isn't something he thought up. This is information he is directly receiving. The question is, how was he getting this information?
So, when looking at the possibilities, in seeing Nikola Tesla's own quotes, he would often say that the information he's getting, it's not even himself that's coming up with it. He essentially said that it's coming from some divine source, some divine force above him, and he's simply just acting as the conduit for this information. So, in looking at that, I mean, maybe he was channeling extraterrestrials.
If Nikola Tesla did indeed have contact with non-terrestrials, what was their message? Why would they help humans? And how would they do it?
Totally possible to me that they would, again, not directly, but maybe just influence him with this information, telepathically put it into his mind without Nikola Tesla's necessarily knowledge, and give him, you know, this knowledge or this understanding to bring out to the public.
Is it possible that Tesla received information from a divine source or even extraterrestrials? And if so, is that why his work had to be hidden? Who else in history has received information in such ways? Such answers could be found if we go back to Nazi Germany and the time of Adolf Hitler, along with the connections that he himself had.
One thing that is well documented in history is how obsessed Hitler was in attaining power in both the physical and the supernatural realm. I mean, the Nazis even claimed New Swabia as their territory in Antarctica. Why would the Nazis claim some random, isolated, middle-of-nowhere territory in Antarctica as their territory unless they're there for a specific reason? Now, what's interesting is that a lot of the insiders are coming out saying that the Nazis had a secret base in Antarctica. There's an insider that we specifically talked to who, when we brought this up to him about the Nazi bases in Antarctica, he was really surprised. Now, this person still has yet to come out publicly, but he was shocked when we started talking about the Nazi bases. So, there really does seem to be something there.
So the question is, why was Hitler sending his troops to Antarctica in the first place? What could have possibly been so important to him to build a base there and divert so many resources to a barren, frozen, and cold world? Was he looking for something of great importance or building a weapon so secret that he had to go to Antarctica to do that? He wanted global power, and he was conducting experiments in the supernatural and even the UFO realm because, unlike most mainstream scientists today, he knew if he had access to this kind of power and technology, nothing could stop him.
One case study is to examine the controversial topic of the so-called Vril Society. The Vril Society, also known as the All-German Society for Metaphysics, was formed by a group of female psychic mediums led by Maria Orsic in 1921. The group claimed to have received communication from extraterrestrials of the Aryan race. The women would practice meditation and other techniques intended to strengthen their abilities. It is said to get the public's interest, the women in the Vril Society would discuss the Germans' connections to the Aryan race. The word Vril was formed from the ancient Sumerian word Vril, meaning like God. Some believe that Maria received telepathic messages in a secret German Templar script, a language unknown to her, containing technical data for the construction of a flying machine.
And it's said that they were channeling information from an extraterrestrial intelligence, I believe from the star system Aldebaran. And this extraterrestrial intelligence wanted to help uplift humanity, so they were channeling or telepathically communicating with the Vril girls and Maria Orsic, communications and schematics and blueprints and information to help them build anti-gravity devices. You know, anti-gravity and free energy or zero-point energy go hand in hand. So it's said that this ETI or this extraterrestrial intelligence was trying to help this group of girls with this information to uplift humanity, basically. But now, of course, that was during Nazi Germany in World War II, and it's said that the Nazis sniffed out what the Vril Society was doing and then basically co-opted their plans and what was going on there.
Anti-gravity, free energy, and zero-point energy. So if the Vril Society was working on technological advancements to better our world, wouldn't this spark an interest in the Nazis to infiltrate and bring about bigger and more frightening things related to space exploration? And if so, did this perhaps lead to the start of the German secret space program?
The Vril Society didn't have any evil intent, at least at the beginning. It was created by a group of women, very attractive women, with the intent of just helping their country. Now, in 1927, Hitler found out about the Vril Society and personally got involved with it. Now, you have to remember, back then, everyone thought Hitler was a great man who was leading their country to a new era. So I'm sure that these women who were involved with this Vril Society didn't think that the knowledge that they were receiving was going to be used for weapons of mass destruction or even a part of some sinister plot.
Yeah, I think with discussions like these, you really have to take yourself outside of what you know history told you and put yourselves in their shoes. At that time, the public didn't know Hitler was wiping people out, right? People would just foam at the mouth whenever he'd appear anywhere, and Maria Orczyk was probably honored to be working with Hitler. I mean, can you imagine if the leader of your country wanted to personally work directly with you, and not only that, but actually believed you were communicating telepathically with extraterrestrials? Most likely, she probably thought she was helping make the world a better place. And I think for people who think, well, you know, she could see things or she was psychic, and wouldn't she have known who Hitler was? You have to understand, with these extremely important people in history, there are a whole lot of things that block people with abilities from seeing those things that's actually going on.
Soon, Hitler modified the Vril into the Nazi Party, and it became a male-dominated organization. He placed his own people in charge of the secret society, including commander of the SS Heinrich Himmler, mastermind behind the Gestapo Hermann Göring, and head of the Nazi Party Martin Bormann. Hitler became obsessed with harnessing Vril, or prana, the fundamental, limitless cosmic life force energy. Many historians and theorists believe this is how the Nazis were able to build top-secret aircraft not of this world, such as the controversial test flight of the RFZs, the Vril 1 Jager, and the most secretive and mysterious out of all, Die Glocke, or the Bell.
What people may not know is that the Nazis created so many things that are in use in our society and in the military today. I mean, some of it has benefited our society and some of it has been very harmful, but they created things such as highways. Then you got guided missiles on the other end of this. I mean, stealth bombers, massive tanks, fluoride, nuclear bombs, all kinds of different technology, and then even microwaves. And some claim even space travel, just to name a few of the things that they've created. Now, the most controversial experiment I would say that they created is the Die Glocke, or the Nazi bell.
Die Glocke is said to be able to distort the gravitational field around the bell, which would produce strange and unusual distortions in time and space, thus allowing Nazi scientists to see or even visit the past or future.
I think many people dismiss the Die Glocke or the bell as purely science fiction. What's really strange, though, is that right before the war ended, Maria Orczyk just completely disappeared. But that's not all. The SS General Hans Kammler, who was allegedly in charge of the bell, along with his entire team of scientists and developers, all disappeared. They all went missing and were actually never heard from again, which is just super weird. Some say Kammler used the bell to escape and to hide the bell in another time. Others say they all went to another planet. What's weird is that in 1965, in a small town in Pennsylvania, an object crashed from the sky, which was described exactly as what the Die Glocke looked like, with strange markings and everything. But then, I mean, what does all of this mean?
Was this a UFO or a meteor? Why was the Army called in?
He was personally getting briefings from 23 spies.
And what did he reveal just before his death?
This was a very unnatural thing, in my opinion.
The secret space program is very multi-layered.
With conflicting agendas.
Have we been to other planets? Have we made colonies on other planets?
It had already been done. We already had bases on the moon with people working.
It appears that the moon is hollow. It's just not possible at all, and yet it's happening.
I was recruited to go off planet in 2006 to join a Mars colony.
Mars is the remnants of an ancient civilization, and there were conflicts with the indigenous Martians who were non-human looking.
There's actually green forests on Mars, and we're not being allowed to know about it openly.
Now, this is where it gets super interesting.